Good to be back in Roswell. Our board, New Mexico Partnerships Board, met here in March, and you guys just did a great job. I mean, we really appreciated the hospitality and the tours that were set up. It really went very, very well. They only meet 4 times a year face-to-face, and this was a great meeting. Thank you. All right, so just briefly on a few different topics you might be interested in. I want to talk a little bit about, we're really the state's marketing arm and business development arm, so we work closely with John and Amanda and others, put together sales trips, trade shows, things like that to try to generate some interest in our state from manufacturers and back office providers and distributors, you know, research and development operations, etc. So let me just make a few comments about 3 different topics. Number 1 would be what's going on in terms of activity levels, essentially the pipeline, which is where you start from a marketing perspective. Second of all would be, okay, are we closing those projects as we work together? Are they ending up in New Mexico communities versus Texas or Arizona or Colorado communities? And third, I just want to make a couple comments about how well we work together with Roswell-Chaves County EDC, okay? And then I'll sit down. This should be fairly quick. So I think the real bright news is if you look at the pipeline for generated through marketing, it is the best it's been in 7 years. We had a metric last year to qualify 60 prospects. Okay, these are serious companies that have said, hey, we're going to look at New Mexico, usually along with other states, Arizona, Colorado, etc., right? We've got a budget. We know we're going to employ so many people. We have this capital investment. Last year, we had 91 qualified prospects. Our metric was 60. So this was a very, very good year. I mean, you can really see things turn. Those of you that do marketing and sales, you got to start with leads and prospects to qualify them, don't you, in terms of real customers. So that looks really good. Another indicator was very strong, and that is, I feel like the best indicator of a company's strong interest is when they get on an airplane and they come visit a community. And last year we had 27 visits, 27 companies visit. There were more visits than that totally, but we only count 1 per company. That's a good sign also. So things are going well. Again, the most we've seen since before the recession. What's hot? Well, manufacturing's hot. 40% of those prospects are manufacturers. John alluded to the interest which many communities share. You know, we got to get some manufacturing jobs that pay well as part of our history, really, our ethic as a country. But also what's hot? Back office operations, not necessarily call centers. Things like claims processing, hardware and software, technical support, things like that are really hot right now. Everybody's looking for buildings. Transportation, distribution, logistics, energy, you know, in spite of as Kevin said, the plummeting of, you know, essentially in half of oil prices, we still see a lot of energy related projects. And about half of them are traditional, about half of them are clean. You know, we've done anything from, we've done 3 or 4 transload projects to, on the other side, manufacturers would make huge volumes of photovoltaic devices, you know, so it's a pretty hot part of the market right now. And also this area, I think particularly would benefit a lot of food processing projects out there right now. Now they tend to want a building. They really get interested in you got a specific building. They're very interested in doing that. But that's essentially what's hot right now. There's a lot of good activity. We just got to close it. Part of why we're seeing more activity, I think, is because of 3 reasons. One is we're not breaking any records from a national perspective economically, as Kevin well knows, but it's a lot better than it was 3 or 4 years ago, right? And, you know, that economic strength, of course, then generates projects that hopefully we can compete for in New Mexico. So number 1, you got a stronger economy. 2 is you've got an improved product, and Ron deals a lot with these issues. Essentially, if you look at other taxes like our treatment of manufacturers, particularly because of single weighted sales factor passage, Ernst & Young and others have done analyses, and we essentially have moved from the back of the pack in the West to the front of the pack in terms of our tax treatment of manufacturers. That's something we want to get out and market, obviously, you know, so that's pretty good. So I think the product is improved. And then third is we're doing more marketing, frankly. I mean, our budget really got chopped significantly. I've been back in New Mexico about 3.5 years, and we were at a state where our budget was smaller than the budget that we had. I managed a regional group in Doñana County in the Sea Valley Economic Development Alliance before I got to know Kevin well, and the state budget was less than Doñana County's budget for marketing at one time. Now that's built back up, and it's enabled us to do. We didn't advertise for 2 years. Well, this year we'll place 17 different ads. You know, so that has some impact. You're getting out in marketing. All right, 2, closing. How well are we doing in closing projects? We didn't do very well last year. Our percentage closure rate was really pretty poor as a state. And so one of the things we're doing is trying to figure out why are we not competing with the Arizonas of the world? You know, I mean, the pipeline's loading up. We got to convert these into companies and employ people. And we did a little analysis of 20 projects that had gone elsewhere. A couple of them they just pulled the plug on, but essentially these are projects that went to Arizona, or Texas, Texas particularly. And we just tried to figure out why are they not coming here. Interestingly enough, I mean, labor, as you say, is important. Workforce is important, but it wasn't the number one factor. The number one factor was our communities did not have good buildings, good empty buildings, ready to go. 70%, that might be higher than you think, of our prospects want an existing building. Now, it only ends up about 50% of those prospects actually will move into an existing building, but it's a lure. If you got a good existing building, it brings them in the community. They say, that building doesn't really work, but I really like Roswell. Looks like it matches up really well. And so that's where it's important to have good product that is not only empty, but it's also functional and relatively modern as well. An example would be like manufacturers these days. They want 30-foot clear height, ceiling height pretty much, and yet there's a lot of buildings out there that are 16, 18 feet, and it's just not of interest to the marketplace, essentially. So that is key. If you can find ways, I've talked to John, a lot, and I know you're very creative, but if you can figure out ways to get some existing product out there, modified on some of the buildings you've got, and you've got a few out there, this is a real key factor right now. We see this particularly with food processing firms. There are a lot of food processing projects in existing buildings. Incentives was number 2. That's probably going to get corrected because of the fact that closing fund got increased to $50 million. Assuming those monies are spent wisely, we ought to be able to close some projects. So anyways, and then you see workforce and things like that. All right, the third point, last point, would be I wanted to talk a little bit about your organization. We work all over the state, 60, 70 economic organizations around the state. I spent 3.5 years previously in Austin, Texas, doing consulting around the country. Gave me a chance to look at economic organizations, and it's easy for me to say, you got a good organization here. You do. I mean, part of it is when I get over here, I really see this kind of a roll up the sleeves type of ethic, which I think is always really good in terms of our free enterprise system. You've got it here. I mean, it really is a strong competitive advantage for you. But you've also got a very good organization, and I think it's because it combines different things. You have heavy private sector involvement, and you've got the partnership with the city and the county as well. And I think, Mayor, you'd only been on the job maybe a week or so before John brought me in your office, and we met. And I mean, it's clear. I mean, you're really interested in economic development, and that comes through very, very quickly to clients as well as And so, appreciate that. But why do I see your good organization? Well, one reason is because you get engaged. You don't expect us to do everything from the state level. That doesn't work very well, any better than it does at the federal level, right? You get engaged, and so, yeah, John and I, we do a trip to Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia every year. They're mostly defense and aerospace firms. John is right with me there with 1 or 2 other people. I think we've done that 3 years or so in a row. And he represents you really well, and those are good companies. Those are companies that I look at and I think, God, why are they here in D.C.? It doesn't make any sense. They're spending too much for labor. They're spending too much for buildings. They're locked into to this beltway. It's a different mentality, and a lot of them, I think we've helped influence where they're starting to look at New Mexico seriously. John has been on those trips. He's not depending on us to do it, from the state level. They're also very involved in the unmanned airborne vehicle situation. Your organization helps underwrite that. We can't do it all on ourselves. We always set up about 30 meetings. John and I did a bunch of those. Was in Atlanta, I guess, a few months ago or so. You roll up your sleeves just like I see when I come to the community, and you help get it done. And I got to commend you for that. The other thing is, John's got an idea, and he's a creative guy. He will press it. So we couldn't afford to do the MRO aircraft maintenance show last year. Just didn't have the budget for it. And obviously you're the preeminent community in the state and certainly in the Southwest in terms of aircraft maintenance. So I'm happy to say we got in the budget now. And a lot of it is because John said, we really need to be in the show. So we'll be doing an exhibit, and we'll be doing some meetings at the MRO aircraft maintenance show, which is right up your sweet spot, essentially. You're as good as anybody. So when I say you're as good, I really mean that. You really got an excellent organization. You get involved with us at trade shows and sales trips. You provide creative ideas, and sometimes it's criticisms, which we need. We get better as a result, and I commend you for that. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hopefully working on a lot of successful projects over the next year with you.